Greetings, and thank you for joining the Dreamy Science Stories. Tonight, we wander into one of the most unusual and captivating puzzles of existence, the puzzle of perception. It's a subtle presence that shapes your world long before you consciously notice anything. It quietly molds every sound you hear, every glimmer of light you see, and each brief sensation that passes through you. Perception exists in the delicate gap between the outside world and your inner mind, weaving together everything you experience. It turns raw vibrations into melodies, scattered shapes into meaning, and even the faint movement of air into feeling. It is familiar, yet strangely elusive, an invisible creator crafting the version of reality you move through. If these gentle explorations bring you comfort, feel free to like, subscribe, or share your thoughts. It helps others discover this quiet corner of the internet, one restful listener at a time. But for now, just allow yourself to unwind. Let your breath slow, let your muscles loosen, and let your mind drift into calmness as we begin. Your mind adjusts the world before you ever become aware of it. Long before a sensation reaches consciousness, countless bits of information are softened, ignored, or emphasized. Signals from your senses compete for attention, though most never reach awareness at all. The brain quietly filters out what feels routine or unimportant while giving extra weight to anything new, emotional, or vital for your well-being. A room you know well stops feeling like a maze of shapes and colors. It becomes nothing more than a quiet setting in the background. Sounds that should be separate melt into a soft blur. Even the rhythm of your own breath and heartbeat fades away unless something draws your attention back to them. What feels like raw, unfiltered experience is actually a version of reality your mind has already trimmed, softened, and shaped according to priorities you never consciously selected. You almost never encounter the original signal, only the refined story that your nervous system presents to you. The world you think you're perceiving is mostly a forecast from your brain. To keep your experience smooth and continuous, the mind is constantly predicting what will happen next and filling in the empty spaces before the details even arrive. When you read, you often sense the next word after only a few letters. When someone talks, you're already anticipating the finish of their sentence before they get there. Your visual world operates the same way. Once your brain concludes that a place contains a wall, a table, and a lamp, it doesn't rebuild that image from nothing every moment. Instead, it maintains a running model and tweaks only the small changes. This approach saves enormous mental energy and allows you to react instantly. But it also means that most of what you experience is filtered through what you expect to see. Illusions that play on misleading cues show just how deeply the mind commits to its predictions, sticking to them even when the raw sensory information tells a completely different story. Your eyes actually supply much less detail than you assume. When your gaze sweeps across a space, it isn't capturing every surface, it's simply gathering a few scattered clues. The part of your vision that offers true sharpness is tiny, sitting right at the center. Everything outside that point fades into softer impressions, broad hints of motion rather than crisp detail. Because the pathways leading from the eye are limited, the retina must compress information. It prioritizes edges, lines, and changes over time, while flat and uniform regions are sent as rough summaries. Yet wherever you look, the world feels richly detailed. That sense of richness comes from the brain weaving countless brief glances into a single continuous scene and filling missing pieces with memory and expectation. You feel as if the entire scene is sharp at once, even though only a tiny portion ever reaches your awareness in true clarity. At the point where the optic nerve exits each eye lies a small patch with no light-sensitive cells, a natural blind spot. Any image that falls there sends no signal at all. You might expect this to appear as a dark hole in your vision, but the mind hides the absence perfectly. Colors and textures nearby flow effortlessly across the missing area, as though an unseen painter has filled the blank space. Simple demonstrations, where a small object disappears when moved into just the right position, reveal that this hidden process is real. Yet in everyday life it feels so seamless that you never notice anything unusual. The mind performs subtle maintenance behind the scenes, revealing just how eager it is to generate missing pieces whenever reality leaves blanks. What you experience as the external world isn't simply delivered to you, it is actively reassembled, polished, and corrected so its rough edges remain unseen. Your awareness always trails behind the true present, because every perception must travel, be decoded, and woven into a coherent moment. Instead of bombarding you with staggered, delayed fragments, the brain pauses briefly, collecting signals over a tiny window, and then presents them as one smooth moment. It even adjusts inputs that travel at different rates, aligning sight and sound so they seem perfectly in sync, and ironing out movement so objects appear to glide rather than stutter. The now you experience is really a polished summary of what happened moments ago. By the time you sense it, the universe has already shifted forward. Even the feeling of being a single, solid you may be a guided fantasy, an ongoing construction built from signals about your body, memories, goals, and social instincts. That inner character quietly reshapes itself, changing with your mood, posture, surroundings, or even how connected you feel to your own body. When the senses clash or the brain receives contradictory information, the illusion can falter. People may feel detached, as if floating outside their body or inhabiting unfamiliar limbs. Vision itself is crafted in the brain, not simply captured by the eyes. Light enters as raw data, but the mind transforms it into shapes, objects, and scenes with meaning. If certain visual regions falter, a person may have perfectly healthy eyes yet be unable to recognize a face or perceive smooth motion. And when these areas are stimulated directly, people often report bursts of color or simple patterns, even in total darkness. Some emerging visual prosthetics bypass damaged tissue altogether, sending simplified electrical patterns straight into the brain, which the mind gradually learns to treat as rudimentary images. Hearing, too, is guided partly by expectation. In a noisy space, your brain predicts and reconstructs speech from the chaos rather than simply recording what arrives at the ear. It constantly scans for patterns that resemble familiar speech and recognizable voices. When parts of a sentence are briefly hidden by a burst of noise, people often still report hearing the full phrase, as if nothing had been missing. The mind tends to fill in the expected sounds, smoothing the gap so the message feels continuous. A similar phenomenon appears in music. Once a melody becomes familiar, your internal sense of it can continue even after the sound stops, letting you feel each note landing in time. What seems like simple hearing is actually a partnership between incoming sound waves and an inner model of how the world should sound. Touch, too, is a story your mind constructs from scattered pieces of information. Beneath your skin, various receptors respond to pressure, stretch, vibration, temperature, and chemical shifts. Each receptor sends its own stream of signals along separate pathways, reaching the brain at different speeds and intensities. Yet the brain weaves them together into a unified sensation, like a gentle stroke, a sharp jab, or the weight of a resting hand. Context plays a powerful role. A light touch may feel comforting when expected, yet unsettling when it arrives out of nowhere. Even the shape of an object in your palm is not sensed as a whole but assembled from countless tiny details across your skin. What feels like a single touch is actually a rich narrative formed from many small signals working in unison. Your sense of balance is a quiet choreography of movement, fluid dynamics, and prediction. Deep inside the inner ear, tiny canals filled with fluid shift as you move, bending delicate hair cells that signal your orientation. Nearby structures hold small crystals that tug on sensors as gravity acts on them. These signals mix with input from muscles, joints, and vision to create a continuous sense of up, down, and motion. When the systems fall out of sync, such as during spinning rides or on rough seas, dizziness and nausea often follow. In environments where gravity is weaker or absent, like in orbit, the brain must relearn how to orient the body. Though rarely noticed when functioning well, this hidden system keeps you balanced and guides every step you take. Color, too, exists only within the mind. Although it feels like a property of the outside world, color begins as nothing more than differing wavelengths of light entering the eye. The wavelengths themselves hold no hue, they are simply energy. Specialized cells in the retina respond to these variations and send intricate patterns of signals toward the brain. The brain blends these signals with memory, expectation, and context to produce the vivid experience we call color. A single color can change dramatically depending on the light around it or the objects that sit beside it. Under some conditions, a simple gray can look vividly blue, or a warm hue can suddenly appear cool. These shifts reveal how much interpretation the brain performs behind the scenes. Color becomes a narrative crafted by the nervous system, updated moment by moment to help you notice contrast, shape, and meaning. Without the mind organizing these signals, there would be no red or green, no soft gold at sunset, only quiet fluctuations of energy waiting to be transformed. Time can feel stretched or compressed depending on how you direct your attention. The flow of moments is not governed by an internal clock ticking at a fixed speed. Instead, it is molded by shifts in focus, emotion, and the unexpected. When you are deeply absorbed in something engaging, minutes drift by with little notice. But when you wait for something eagerly, every second can feel unusually long. New experiences often feel more spacious because the mind captures more detail, forming richer memories that stretch the moment in hindsight. During frightening events, people sometimes report that everything seemed to slow down. This effect appears because the brain gathers information at a higher rate, making the experience feel denser and longer. By contrast, repetitive tasks can compress hours into what feels like a brief moment. Time inside the mind is a flexible terrain. Awareness moves freely across it, adjusting the apparent length of each experience based on attention and emotion. The motion you perceive is partly constructed so the world can appear stable. Whenever something shifts in your field of view, your eyes perform rapid corrections to keep track of it. These adjustments happen constantly, yet you do not see abrupt jumps. Instead, the brain smooths the changes, turning them into a seamless stream. Even the motion caused by your own eye movements is removed from awareness, allowing the world to appear steady. When frames of visual information arrive out of order, the mind fills the gaps with predictions of where things should be. This creates the illusion that objects moved at a steady, continuous pace. Some visual systems deliberately use this tendency by presenting static images in timed sequences that generate the feeling of animation. The fluid motion you perceive is not a faithful copy of the visual signals entering your eyes, but a refined narrative your brain constructs to keep the world coherent. You rarely witness motion exactly as it occurs in the physical world. You experience it the way your mind predicts it should behave. Each time you revisit a memory, it subtly transforms. Though memories feel like preserved snapshots of past moments, they are dynamic structures that shift whenever they are accessed. During recall, a memory becomes flexible, blending with your current emotions and interpretations before being stored again in a slightly revised version. Small alterations accumulate over time, gradually reshaping your personal story of the past. People may feel certain about details that never occurred or misjudge when an event happened without noticing the error. Emotions influence which elements of a memory become vivid and which quietly fade. A joyful event may grow even warmer with time, while a stressful moment may gain clarity it did not originally possess. This constant updating helps memories stay useful, but it also means remembering is not retrieval, it is reconstruction. Long before you consciously choose what to notice, your brain has already decided what deserves priority. Every moment floods your senses with sights, sounds, and sensations, yet deeper neural circuits quickly sort them, amplifying what matters and muting the rest. A sudden shift in your peripheral vision can seize your attention before you understand what moved. A familiar voice may rise through background noise while other sounds disappear from awareness. This filtering protects you from sensory overload, allowing you to respond quickly without being buried under excessive input. By the time you believe you have chosen to notice something, many hidden processes have already guided that choice. Awareness becomes the final step in a long chain of silent decisions shaped by experience and instinct. Your attention captures only a narrow slice of the world at any given moment. Although the environment feels richly detailed, the portion you consciously process is surprisingly small. Attention works like a focused beam of light, illuminating one area while the rest fades into a gentle blur. When this mental beam centers on an object or idea, other information slips from awareness, even if it remains within sight. People deeply engaged in a task often fail to notice major changes happening right beside them. Experiments show how unexpected events can pass directly through a scene without being perceived at all. This narrow focus is not a weakness but a strategy that lets the mind devote its resources where they are most effective. Attention determines what will be analyzed in depth and what will be handled by fast, automatic systems. Outside the narrow beam of what you consciously notice, the rest of the world keeps unfolding, though only a tiny slice ever reaches awareness. Your senses are constantly vying for influence, each trying to take the lead in interpreting what is happening. When sight, hearing, and touch deliver conflicting messages, the brain must decide which one deserves priority. Vision often wins because it supplies rich details about form, motion, and spatial layout. Still, there are times when a sound outweighs what you see or when touch corrects a misleading visual impression. This ongoing rivalry keeps perception stable, preventing confusion that would arise if every sense were treated equally when they disagree. On some occasions, the senses blend their inputs, creating entirely new impressions, like hearing a shifted sound because of the way someone's lips move. At other times, one sense becomes the final authority, guiding how you interpret the situation. This fluid hierarchy reveals that perception is not a simple aggregation but a negotiation in which each sense offers evidence toward the brain's best guess of reality. Smell carries a unique emotional force, capable of unlocking memories long buried. Its power comes from direct connections to brain regions handling emotion and memory, bypassing many intermediate steps. A scent after rain may summon childhood, and a faint perfume may evoke someone absent for years. Unlike sight or sound, which emphasize precise spatial details, smell captures the chemical signature of the environment and binds it to inner experience. Even in darkness, your body senses the position of your limbs through systems that monitor muscle tension and joint movement, showing that your sensory world extends far beyond the classic five. Your inner ear contains fragile mechanisms that sense gravity and rotation, helping you stay balanced and oriented. You constantly register temperature, pain, and internal cues like hunger, heartbeat, and the rhythm of your breath. These lesser-known senses create an uninterrupted stream of information that supports movement, awareness, and emotional stability. Without them, your experience of the world would feel thin, unstable, and confusing. Researchers continue to find even more subtle perceptions, such as sensitivity to changes in air pressure or weak magnetic shifts. Your sensory world is far broader and more intricate than the traditional five senses suggest. Dreams show a reality built entirely from within, arising when the mind stops receiving its normal flow of sensory signals. Even without external input, the brain creates vivid environments filled with movement, emotion, voices, and shifting scenes. Fragments of memory and spontaneous neural activity bloom into storylines where impossible events feel natural. These dreams reveal how easily the brain constructs a convincing world when it is no longer bound by physical reality. Sound can change what you think you saw, because your auditory and visual systems constantly collaborate to maintain coherence. A well-timed noise can make one flash appear as two or make a small motion seem larger, subtly rewiring your perception. Likewise, vision can reshape how you hear. Mismatched lip movements can make identical sounds seem different as the brain tries to resolve the conflict. Your sense of your own body is just as flexible. Conflicting signals can shift your body map, making tools, movements, or even absent limbs feel real. These sensations arise because the brain's sensory regions stay active even when external input is minimal. They generate spontaneous patterns that resemble authentic perception, creating impressions that feel real. When memory or imagination activates these circuits, the resulting experience can be nearly indistinguishable from seeing or hearing something external. Focused attention on an imagined object can give it qualities like weight, texture, or temperature. Removing outside stimulation enhances these internal sensations because there are no competing signals to override them. The brain does not fall silent when the environment grows quiet, it becomes more inventive. It fills the empty space with internally produced impressions that reveal how much perception is constructed from within. You frequently perceive faces where none exist because the brain is highly tuned to detect them for social and survival purposes. This sensitivity is so strong that random shapes, clouds, shadows, bark, or windows can suddenly resemble eyes and a mouth. Specialized brain regions devoted to facial recognition activate even when the pattern only loosely matches a real face. While this leads to false positives, it also enables instant recognition of actual faces in busy environments. The phenomenon illustrates how the mind imposes structure on randomness, searching for meaning wherever it can. Humans are wired to detect patterns, and nothing captures attention more powerfully than the suggestion of a face. Taste is largely smell operating through a different pathway, making flavor a collaboration between two intertwined senses. The flavors you experience while eating arise from a partnership between taste receptors on your tongue and scent molecules that travel through the back of your nose. The tongue senses broad categories like sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and savory, but the finer details of flavor come almost entirely from smell. When your nose is blocked, many foods lose their uniqueness and taste surprisingly dull. Even subtle shifts in aroma can dramatically transform the flavor you perceive when scent is strong. Your mind merges taste and smell into a single seamless experience, making the senses feel like one. This is why warm foods often seem richer. They release more scent molecules that enhance flavor. It also explains why memories of taste are tightly linked to memories of smell. What feels like taste alone is actually a duet, with smell adding complexity while the tongue provides the bass notes. Texture on its own can shift the flavor you believe you're sensing. The physical feel of food in your mouth shapes your experience just as strongly as its chemical makeup. Creamy textures can make food seem sweeter or fuller even when nothing has been added. Crisp or crunchy surfaces can make flavors feel brighter and more vivid. Smoothness relaxes the palate, while rough or fibrous textures can heighten sensitivity to subtle notes. Temperature interacts with texture, influencing how quickly flavors spread and how strongly they register. Ice cream, for example, tastes different when slightly softened because the altered texture changes the unfolding of its flavors. Even identical ingredients can deliver different flavors depending on how they are prepared, simply because texture shapes expectation. The mind treats texture as information, setting the stage for flavor before you consciously interpret it. The sense that your body belongs to you is an illusion constructed by the mind. In every moment, you experience yourself as a single, unified body, yet this feeling is produced by many systems working together. Vision confirms where your limbs are, while sensory signals report pressure, temperature, and movement. Internal cues monitor heartbeat, breathing, and posture to complete the picture. The brain integrates these separate inputs into a single sense of bodily ownership. When this integration falters, the feeling of ownership can shift or detach entirely. Some illusions can make a rubber hand or a virtual body feel as though it belongs to you. In rare experiences, people even feel as if they are viewing themselves from outside their own body. These effects show that body ownership is not fixed, it is a narrative constantly maintained by the brain. As long as the incoming signals agree, you feel anchored in your body. But when they conflict, the sense of ownership can shift in unexpected and sometimes startling ways. You can fail to notice events happening right in front of you because your mind filters information faster than you realize. Even when something is clearly visible, your brain may ignore it if your attention is directed elsewhere. Experiments show that a surprising object can pass through a scene without people noticing it at all. This happens because the mind prioritizes what it already considers important and suppresses everything outside that focus. When you concentrate on a task, your brain fills the unattended surroundings with assumptions instead of detailed perception. This filtering strategy helps you survive overwhelming amounts of information even though it limits awareness. Sometimes your attention drifts away so smoothly that you only notice the lapse once your focus returns. During these moments, perception continues, but your conscious involvement fades into the background. When attention comes back, you may feel a brief sense of disconnection, as if the world kept moving without you. Objects that stay unchanged for long periods fade from awareness because the brain is tuned to notice change. Familiar sounds, textures, or visuals vanish from conscious perception once your mind decides they provide no new information, but the moment something shifts even slightly, it snaps back into awareness as though it re-entered the scene. Your brain also predicts upcoming words to speed up communication, crafting likely endings before a sentence finishes. When predictions match reality, understanding feels effortless. When they do not, the brain quickly corrects itself. This constant forecasting explains why familiar patterns can mislead you or cause you to mishear phrases. language comprehension becomes a blend of actual input and the mind's expectations, producing meaning faster than conscious thought. Your internal sense of direction relies on subtle cues, like orientation, movement, and memory, that you barely notice. Your sense of direction relies on a combination of everyday environmental cues that help guide you. The angle of sunlight, the feel of the wind, surrounding sounds, and familiar landmarks all contribute to your ability to orient yourself. At the same time, the brain keeps track of your movements through a process called path integration. When these cues align, navigating feels natural and effortless. But when they conflict, you may experience a brief moment of disorientation, even though nothing around you has visibly changed. Some animals possess astonishing versions of this orientation system, yet humans also carry an unexpectedly sharp directional sense, one that usually operates beneath conscious awareness. You navigate much more by instinctive perception than deliberate thought. Your sense of time is shaped by expectation and surprise. When events unfold exactly as you anticipate, moments feel smooth and brief, slipping past with little texture. When something unexpected occurs, time seems to expand because the mind allocates more attention to processing the unusual details. Anticipation can also make waiting feel longer, as attention becomes fixed on each small moment before the desired event. After a vivid or emotionally intense experience, people often recall it as lasting longer because the memory is densely packed with information. In contrast, routine days fade quickly in hindsight. These shifts reveal that the mind does not measure time with clocks but with emotion, novelty, and prediction, forces that bend the sense of duration into something uniquely personal. You build a seamless world out of fragmented sensory inputs. Each sense sends its own stream of signals, each with slight delays and different forms. Rather than presenting them separately, the brain fuses them into a single, coherent moment. A flash of light, a sound, and a touch may occur at different physical times, yet your mind stitches them into one event. Gaps are filled, mismatches are smoothed, and stray signals are blended into a narrative that feels continuous. Without this integration, the world would appear fragmented and chaotic. Your mind acts like an editor piecing together a film, arranging disconnected clips into a stable sequence. What feels like direct perception is actually a carefully crafted tapestry woven from many independent threads, so seamlessly that the stitching remains invisible. Imagined experiences can feel strikingly real because imagination activates the same neural pathways as perception. A vividly imagined sound may seem to echo, a remembered scent may appear to drift through the air, and a place from your past may form in your mind with near-lifelike clarity. When internal activity becomes strong enough, the brain can interpret it as genuine sensory input. This blending is common when you are tired, deeply focused, or emotionally charged. You hear your own voice differently from everyone else. When you speak, sound reaches you through two routes: vibrations traveling through the air and vibrations resonating through your bones. That internal resonance boosts lower frequencies that others do not hear, which is why your voice sounds richer and more familiar to you than the version captured in recordings. When people hear their recorded voice for the first time, they often feel startled or uneasy because the internal vibrations they are used to are missing. The brain grows familiar with the blended version heard during speaking, so the purely external sound feels foreign. This two-channel system shows how personal your experience of your own voice is. No one else hears the exact mixture of internal and external resonance that you do. Your internal sense of your body does not perfectly match the external image others see. Within your mind exists a personal body map shaped by sensation, guiding movement, balance, and interaction. This map is based on how the body feels, not how it looks, and it often differs from what a mirror shows. The body may feel larger, smaller, closer, or farther away depending on emotion, tension, or fatigue. Some areas feel vivid even though they are barely visible, while other areas feel distant unless moved or touched. This internal perception influences how you walk, gesture, and position yourself. It also shapes how you understand the movements of others, since you compare what you see with how your own body feels. The mismatch between inner and outer body is not confusion. It simply shows that the mind prioritizes sensory feeling over visual appearance. Although the world appears evenly sharp, only a tiny central region of your visual field provides true high resolution. This area, dense with specialized cells, captures fine detail and vivid color. Everything outside it becomes increasingly blurred, offering only general forms and motion. The brain compensates by stitching together information from countless tiny eye movements, creating the illusion of a fully detailed scene. Your eyes scan a scene in rapid bursts, collecting fragments that the brain merges into a unified whole. You seldom notice the uneven clarity because the mind fills in missing details using memory and prediction, forming the impression of a uniformly sharp visual world. Subtle contextual cues shift how large or small objects appear. Size is judged not in isolation but through surrounding shapes, patterns, and distances. An object seems bigger among smaller neighbors and smaller beside something imposing. Even simple lines can trick the brain if their angles imply depth. Light, shadow, and texture all provide hints that alter size perception, which is why familiar objects may look strangely large or small when viewed out of context. Light and shadow dramatically reshape your sense of structure and depth. A flat surface can appear three-dimensional when illuminated in just the right way. Small shifts in lighting change how edges and curves are interpreted. Without shadow, objects lose weight and form. With unfamiliar lighting, their shapes can appear reversed or distorted. Artists use these effects to create volume on flat surfaces, and nature uses them constantly as changing sunlight reshapes the landscape throughout the day. Your mind smooths over the chaos that should occur each time your eyes move. Rapid shifts sweep across the retina, yet you do not perceive abrupt jumps because the brain temporarily dampens visual sensitivity during movement. It then blends the before and after images into a continuous flow. Even blinks, which briefly shut off vision entirely, go unnoticed. Reality feels stable not because it is unchanging, but because the brain hides the instability. You constantly predict the future to interpret the present. The brain generates ongoing forecasts about what should happen next, allowing you to react quickly. You often sense the trajectory of a thrown ball, the shifting scene when you turn your head, or the next word in a sentence before it arrives. These predictions help perception move faster but also color what you become aware of, filtering reality through expectation. Sometimes your brain trusts its expectations more than your senses. If the internal model is strong, it may override conflicting sensory signals. This is why illusions can be convincing even when you know the truth. You might feel a touch a moment early or hear a sound that has already ended because the brain fills in what it believes should be there. Perception is not a direct readout of the world but a negotiation between evidence and prediction. The effort you expect to use influences how heavy something feels. Before lifting an object, the brain estimates weight from its size, shape, and past experience. If you expect heaviness, it may feel surprisingly light. If you expect lightness, it may feel heavier than it is. Identical objects can feel drastically different depending on your assumptions. Weight is not purely physical, it is partly constructed by the mind. Colors around you alter how warm or cold something feels. Cool tones, soft blues or gentle greens, can make a room feel colder even if the temperature is unchanged. Warm hues like red and gold can create a sensation of warmth. A drink may feel hotter in a warm-colored cup and more refreshing in a cooler one. Light color also contributes, making spaces seem chilly or cozy. Temperature is not judged by the skin alone but influenced by visual suggestion. The brain stitches scattered clues into a unified meaning, shaping perception in ways you do not expect. Your mind can generate the feeling of motion even when nothing actually moves. Under certain visual conditions, the brain treats static images as if they were shifting. Repeating shapes, small contrasts, or alternating colors can produce the illusion of motion despite complete physical stillness. This occurs because the visual system is tuned for rapid motion detection, relying heavily on assumptions about how objects normally behave. When a pattern resembles something that could move, the brain may activate motion-sensitive circuits even without real change. In darkness, faint afterimages drift as neurons reset themselves, and tiny involuntary eye movements make still objects shimmer or slide. These illusions reveal how strongly the mind prioritizes motion, sometimes inventing it when signals are unclear. Motion, like many aspects of perception, is partly a narrative the brain constructs. pain can emerge from expectation alone. Its experience is shaped not just by injury but by belief, memory, and anticipation. When you expect pain, the brain can amplify mild sensations or even create discomfort without any harmful input. This response exists because pain functions as a protective signal, urging caution when the brain predicts danger. Sometimes people feel pain after seeing something they believe is harmful, even if it poses no real threat. When expectations are low, real pain can feel weaker. This shows that pain is not a simple echo of damage but a context-shaped interpretation. The mind creates pain not to mislead but to protect, though this system sometimes triggers alarms without real cause. Sweetness can be perceived even when no sugar exists. Taste is shaped by expectation, scent, texture, warmth, and memory. When the mind anticipates sweetness, it heightens the response of taste receptors, making faint signals feel stronger than they are. Certain scents naturally imply sweetness, and the brain blends them with taste information to create sugar where none exists. Smooth textures or warm temperatures enhance the illusion, mimicking qualities of rich sugary foods. Some fruits taste sweeter when warm, not because their chemistry changes, but because warmth signals ripeness to the mind. Even vivid memory can summon a faint sweetness when recalling a familiar treat. This shows that flavor is not merely chemistry but a multisensory construction shaped by expectation and context. Your mind can create sounds that never reached your ears. In deep focus or quiet moments, faint murmurs or imagined voices may appear. These arise because the auditory system stays active even when the world is silent. Sound-detecting neurons continue firing subtly, and when their patterns align, the mind interprets them as external noise. Memory intensifies these illusions. A song stuck earlier in your mind may echo faintly as if still playing. Emotional states heighten sensitivity, especially during anticipation or stress, making internal cues feel like real sound. Even wind, vibration, or the pulse of blood can be transformed into phantom sound through expectation. The boundary between imagined and external vibration is thinner than it appears. Identical colors are not always perceived as the same. Two physically matching hues can look different depending on what surrounds them. Shadows, lighting, contrast, and nearby colors all influence how the brain interprets hue. A gray square may appear blue when placed among warm colors, or yellow when surrounded by cooler tones. This is because your visual system constantly adjusts to maintain stability. Outside, where sunlight changes throughout the day, your brain modifies perceived color so familiar objects don't seem to shift endlessly. Yet this powerful correction can create illusions in which identical shades look completely different. Texture, memory, and even emotions can subtly shift how a color feels: warmer, cooler, softer, or harsher. Color is not a fixed property in the world but a flexible interpretation crafted by the brain. Silence itself can carry a sense of time passing. Even in complete quiet, inner rhythms, your heartbeat, breathing, and the subtle shifting of attention create a personal sense of duration without any external sound. When silence stretches on, it can feel heavy and slow or wide and peaceful, depending on your emotional state. During anticipation, every second seems to thicken. In calm states, moments flow together softly. The mind measures time not through noise, but through internal patterns. Your brain filters out most of the sensory world before it reaches awareness. Each second, far more information enters your senses than you can consciously handle. To avoid overload, the brain rapidly sorts and keeps only what seems useful. Background sounds fade into a blur, countless visual details never enter consciousness. The feel of your clothes, the pressure of your seat, or tiny vibrations around you disappear unless something unusual demands attention. This filtering keeps perception manageable rather than chaotic. You can sense another person's presence even without seeing or hearing them. Subtle cues, air pressure shifts, small floor vibrations, faint air movements, or slight temperature changes signal that someone has entered your space. The brain is highly tuned to these signals, especially in social situations. Much of this detection happens automatically, long before conscious awareness. Emotional sensitivity strengthens this ability, a remnant of evolutionary instincts for safety and connection. Echoes can easily be misinterpreted as new sounds. When a noise bounces off a surface and returns with enough delay, the brain may treat it as a separate event, especially in large or open spaces where reflections stretch out. The mind works constantly to decide whether a sound is original or reflected. When timing becomes unclear, the echo may be categorized as a new source. Subtle echoes also help you sense space, distance, size, and depth, even when you don't notice them consciously. When echoes become complex, the brain weaves them into patterns that can feel musical, mysterious, or confusing. These interpretations show how strongly the mind seeks structure in sound. Even when the sound comes only from your surroundings, you can sense emotion from a voice's quality alone. Tone, rhythm, and subtle vibrations reveal states like calmness, tension, or excitement before the words are understood. A gray square can seem bluish when placed among warm colors, or take on a yellow tint when surrounded by cooler tones. This adaptive shift helps the brain keep color perception stable as lighting conditions constantly change. Outside, where sunlight shifts throughout the day, your visual system adjusts perceived colors so familiar objects don't seem to transform endlessly. Yet this strong correction can also produce illusions where two identical shades appear completely different. Texture, memory, and emotion can also shift perceived color, making the same hue feel warmer or cooler depending on your mood. Color is not a fixed property of the external world but a creation shaped by countless subtle influences. Silence itself can carry a sense of time passing. Even in total quiet, you can feel moments moving forward through internal rhythms and delicate sensory cues. The heartbeat, the rise and fall of your breathing, and the gentle pulses of attention form an inner clock that tracks duration without sound. When silence stretches, it may feel spacious and open or heavy and slow, shaped by your emotional state. In anticipation, silence thickens, with each second seeming longer as the mind waits for a sound that never arrives. In meditation or deep relaxation, silence becomes expansive, letting moments flow smoothly into one another. The mind tracks time not through external cues, but through its own shifting patterns of activity. Even without a single sound, you can feel each moment unfolding. Your brain filters out most of the sensory world before you ever become aware of it. Every second, your senses gather far more data than the mind could consciously handle. To prevent overload, the brain rapidly sifts through this flood, allowing only a small fraction into awareness. Background sounds fade into a blur, and countless visual details never rise to conscious notice. The warmth of your clothes, the firmness of your chair, and faint vibrations in the environment disappear from awareness. Unless something unusual draws attention back, this filtering lets you focus on what matters while routine sensations run automatically in the background. Without this constant selection, sensory life would be chaotic and overwhelming. Instead, perception becomes a curated experience shaped by what the brain considers meaningful. You can sometimes sense another person's presence even without seeing or hearing them. This awareness arises from subtle cues, shifts in air pressure, slight floor vibrations, faint air movements, or tiny changes in temperature near your skin. Your brain is tuned to detect these faint signals, especially when social awareness is important. The nervous system registers these cues automatically long before you consciously realize someone is nearby. Emotional sensitivity enhances this perception. A remnant of ancient survival instincts, this quiet awareness may feel mysterious, yet it is. Rooted in finely tuned perception, echoes can be mistaken for new sounds when reflected waves reach the ear with enough delay or distortion. This effect becomes strongest in large spaces, canyons, or wide-open areas where reflections stretch out. The brain works to determine whether a sound is original or reflected, yet ambiguity can cause it to treat them as separate events. Subtle echoes also help form your sense of space, guiding judgments about distance and size even unconsciously. When echoes become complex, the mind weaves them into patterns that may seem musical, eerie, or confusing. These interpretations show how strongly the mind insists on finding structure in sound. Even when it is only responding to reflections of its own surroundings, you can detect emotion in a voice from its tone alone. A voice conveys far more than the literal meaning of the words it carries. Its rhythm, tone, breath, and tiny shifts in pitch reveal emotional states almost instantly. Even without seeing a face, you can hear tension, warmth, excitement, or unease in a single sentence. This sensitivity exists because the entire body shapes vocal expression. Stress tightens muscles, calm deepens breath, and shifting energy changes the resonance of the voice. These physical adjustments subtly modify sound in ways the brain instantly recognizes. Because humans evolved to sense emotion in the voice, this ability remains deeply rooted today. Remarkably, you can detect emotion in a language you do not understand. The voice becomes a small window into another person's inner world. Faces are recognized faster than almost any other visual form. Specialized brain regions handle this process, making recognition nearly instantaneous. Even in a crowded environment, a face can leap out at your attention before anything else. Your mind extracts identity, emotion, and intention in fractions of a moment. Subtle movements around the eyes or the tilt of a mouth are interpreted with remarkable accuracy. This specialization explains why you can recognize someone from a quick glimpse or a partial view. Threats are often detected before conscious thought has time to react. A sudden motion, a sharp noise, or a subtle environmental shift can trigger immediate readiness. This rapid pathway bypasses slower analysis and prepares the body to move instantly. Only afterward does awareness catch up to interpret what happened. This instinctive sensing is a deep survival mechanism still active in modern life. Your pupils respond not only to light but also to emotion. Excitement can open them slightly, making the world seem a bit brighter. Fear or alertness can produce the same expansion as the body prepares for action. Curiosity subtly widens them, signaling increased attention. Even affection can shift pupil size, adding softness to the gaze. These reactions are driven by the autonomic nervous system, just like breath and heart rate. Vibrations are sensed not only through the skin but also through bone. The body acts as a resonant structure carrying movement deep beneath the surface. Waves traveling through the skull or long bones reach the inner ear with surprising ease. There, specialized mechanisms translate vibration into meaningful sensation. This is why your own voice sounds richer to you than it does in recordings. You hear it partly through bone conduction, which adds low tones that others do not perceive. Musical instruments produce similar effects. A deep drum beat can seem to echo inside your chest, and a low string note on a cello can feel as if it travels through the bones of your spine. Even tools such as electric toothbrushes or certain power equipment produce sensations that seem to move through the entire body rather than rest on the skin. Specialized hearing devices use bone conduction deliberately to bypass the eardrum. These experiences reveal that touch is not limited to the surface. The skeleton itself acts as a sensitive channel that carries information inward, broadening the range of what the body can feel. Your brain builds spatial maps out of incomplete glimpses. As you move through unfamiliar spaces, the mind gathers fragments of information from quick glances, reflected sounds, and distant outlines. These fragments become tiny puzzle pieces that the brain assembles into an internal map. Even when you never see the entire environment at once, a doorway glimpsed from the corner of the eye becomes an anchor point. The quality of light hinting at a window becomes another. The echo of footsteps or the softness of carpet adds further detail. The brain stitches these clues together, forming a mental layout that allows you to walk confidently through the space on a second pass. Remarkably, this map persists even when the lights are low or when you navigate using memory alone. If something changes, such as a chair being moved, you may notice immediately because the mind expects the environment to match its internal blueprint. This process shows how perception extends beyond what you directly see. The brain constantly predicts and fills in details, turning scattered glimpses into a coherent sense of place that feels complete even when the visual information is thin. Scents can be remembered for astonishing lengths of time. Among all the senses, smell has the most direct and emotionally charged path to memory. A faint aroma can transport you to a moment you have not consciously recalled in years. This happens because sense signals travel from the nose straight to brain regions involved in emotion and long-term memory without passing through filtering layers. As a result, memories tied to scent retain their vividness and emotional texture. The smell of sun-warmed wood may bring back childhood summers. A trace of spice might evoke a meal shared with someone you once knew well. Even scents encountered briefly can become permanent markers in the mind. Unlike images or sounds that often lose sharpness, scents return with surprising clarity. This powerful connection shows how emotion and memory intertwine with sensory experience. A single breath can bridge the present moment with the distant past. Your mind exaggerates contrast to help define edges. To understand shapes and boundaries, the visual system amplifies differences between light and dark. Without this enhancement, objects would blend together and the world would appear flatter. The brain boosts contrast along borders so they stand out clearly. Even identical brightness can appear different depending on context. This effect helps you interpret shadows, detect movement, and navigate complex environments. Artists often mimic this natural process to create depth on a flat surface. What you see is an adapted image, not a perfect copy of the world. Flavor depends on a combination of sound, color, and texture. Taste begins on the tongue, but the full experience of flavor is woven from many senses working together. The crunch of a crisp apple signals freshness and sharpens the sweetness. Bright hues can make food seem fuller and more flavorful, whereas softer colors subtly suggest a gentler, lighter taste. Food temperature affects how quickly aromas lift into the air, and its texture determines how boldly each flavor reveals itself. Tiny sounds, the crack of a cookie, the gentle fizz of a drink, quietly color your overall perception of flavor. All these signals arrive together in the brain, merging into a single seamless sensation. If even one element shifts, the whole flavor experience can transform, despite the ingredients being identical. A smooth, creamy texture can trick the mind into sensing extra sweetness. Richer tones can make a flavor feel warmer, fuller, or more intense. Flavor emerges as a woven tapestry of sound, color, scent, texture, and taste working together, showing just how tightly interlinked your senses are beneath every moment of perception. Humans can detect magnetic shifts in ways far gentler and more subtle than most would assume. We don't consciously navigate by Earth's magnetic field like certain animals, yet studies show the brain silently reacts to changes in magnetic direction. Tiny iron-rich particles within the skull may gently interact with surrounding magnetic fields. Although these interactions don't create conscious directional awareness, they seem to subtly shift certain brain rhythms. Experiments reveal that when magnetic conditions shift, the brain's electrical activity changes as if the mind has noticed, despite the person being unaware. This faint sensitivity likely traces back to ancient ancestors who depended heavily on environmental cues to navigate. Today, it survives as a quiet echo of those abilities, subtly supporting your sense of orientation and spatial awareness. You may never consciously feel magnetic shifts, yet your nervous system can still respond in subtle, almost undetectable ways. These shifts show how deeply perception depends on the mind's energy reserves. As that energy fades, the brain compensates by streamlining the world around you. The outcome is a gentler, less exact version of reality, shaped as much by fatigue as by the senses. Dim light subtly rewrites the colors your eyes think they perceive. As daylight slips away, your visual world shifts in ways you seldom notice consciously. The eye's color-sensitive cells grow quiet, passing the task to another set better suited for dimmer conditions. These nighttime specialists detect motion and form with ease, but they cannot provide the full spectrum of color. Reds fade earliest, slipping into subdued brownish hues. Yellows soften next, drifting gently toward gray. Blues hold on longest, giving twilight its cool, serene, faintly dreamlike palette. Street lights and moonlight craft their own palettes, washing surfaces with traces of gold or silver and subtly altering your sense of depth. In dimness, familiar objects adopt new personalities, exposing textures and shadows unnoticed in daylight. The brain tries to compensate by filling in expected colors, yet the shift still remains visible. Night vision shows that color is fluid, a negotiation between light, biology, and memory, always drifting with the surroundings. Movement takes on a different character in the dark. With reduced visibility, the brain gets fewer details about edges and forms, forcing it to rely on alternative cues to understand motion. Even the simplest motions acquire a new character. Someone crossing a dim street may appear to glide, not step, because the subtle movements of their limbs fade away. Shadows can seem to swell or contract as they slide across surfaces, creating motion illusions even when nothing moves. At night, peripheral vision takes the lead, picking up movement that feels more dramatic than it would in daylight. These shifts reveal how strongly perception depends on mental energy. When that energy wanes, the brain simplifies the world to conserve resources. The result is a softer, less precise reality shaped not by the senses alone but by fatigue itself. Low light quietly reshapes the colors you believe you see. Cells tuned to bright illumination fall silent, and those suited for dim conditions take over. They excel at motion and form but convey color poorly. Reds fade first, yellows drift toward gray, and blues linger longest, giving night its distinct palette. With fewer visual details, movement appears smoother in darkness. A walking figure may seem to glide, shadows may swell or shrink, and still objects can appear to drift. The brain relies more heavily on prediction, giving motion a fluid and mysterious quality at night. Even pitch, one of sound's most stable qualities, shifts with context. A tone that seems clear alone can feel different when surrounded by higher or lower sounds. Large spaces round its edges, small rooms sharpen them. Pitch becomes as much an interpretation as a physical vibration. The brain anticipates incoming contact so strongly that you may feel a faint touch just before it happens. Receptors prime themselves, muscles adjust, and if the real touch arrives early or late, the mismatch creates a subtle sense that the world is momentarily out of sync. Emotion quietly tints every sense. Joy warms colors, sadness softens them. Anxiety sharpens small details, while calmness smooths experience into something spacious and gentle. Even taste and smell bend under emotion's influence. Stress dulls flavors, happiness heightens sweetness. When something potentially dangerous enters your environment, attention shifts to it before conscious thought. These rapid pathways evolve to detect danger with minimal information. Threat is registered first, analysis comes later. The brain is more sensitive to movement than to stillness. Motion delivers a stream of changing information, triggering responsive cells instantly. Still objects fade into the background, while the slightest twitch draws the eye. The mind identifies patterns long before awareness arrives. When something feels off, the subconscious has already recognized a mismatch. Anticipating the next note in a melody emerges from this silent pattern tracking system. Even without physical beats, the mind constructs rhythm through expectation and memory. Rhythm often exists in imagination before it exists in sound. Your internal timing systems organize perception into patterns, allowing you to feel a pulse even when no distinct sound marks it. Musicians rely on this internal beat to maintain steady time. Listeners often continue the rhythm, tapping or swaying, even after the music stops. Everyday experiences show this effect as well. Flashing lights, swinging signs, or rolling waves create rhythm simply through repetition. The brain is tuned to cycles and intervals, grouping sensory input into natural, predictable sequences. This internal pulse coordinates movement, speech, and thought, revealing that rhythm is not merely a property of sound but a fundamental organizing principle of perception. You understand speech in noisy places more easily than you expect. Despite overlapping voices and clattering sounds, the brain isolates the words meant for you through prediction, familiarity, and specialized pathways. As you listen, your mind anticipates sentence structure and fills in missing pieces. Visual cues like lip movements help, along with the familiar rhythms and tones of known voices. The brain treats speech as a priority, filtering background noise so the relevant signal stands out. Often you only notice the interference if you focus on it deliberately. This ability to extract meaning from chaos shows how powerfully the mind organizes sensory experience. Being in water changes your perception of the world around you. Sound travels faster, arriving through both skin and bone, making it feel rounder and closer. Light bends at the surface, causing objects to appear nearer or larger. Colors shift as deeper wavelengths fade, muting reds and leaving greens and blues more prominent. Your sense of balance changes as gravity's influence lessens. Movement feels slower yet effortless, altering your sense of time. Pressure wraps evenly around the body, dulling some sensations while amplifying others, like currents brushing your skin. Even your awareness of your own size shifts as buoyancy reduces weight. Water reveals how adaptable perception truly is. Closing your nose alters the way things taste. Taste begins on the tongue, but much of what you call flavor comes from scent molecules rising through the back of the throat. When the nose is blocked, these aromatic signals fade, leaving only basic taste categories. Foods that once seemed rich may suddenly feel flat, and subtle distinctions disappear. Texture becomes more noticeable as the brain searches for replacement cues. Temperature plays a larger role as well, making warm foods feel softer and cool foods sharper. Even familiar dishes can become unrecognizable without smell. This shift reveals how fully the senses cooperate to create flavor. Distance is estimated using many cues beyond vision. The brain relies on the known size of familiar objects, the texture of surfaces, and the clarity of details. When objects appear hazy or indistinct, the mind interprets them as farther away. Your internal timing systems weave perception into rhythmic patterns, allowing you to sense a steady pulse even when no actual beats occur. Musicians rely on this inner metronome to stay aligned, and listeners often continue tapping or swaying long after the music has faded. Everyday life reveals the same mechanism. Repeating motions, like flickering lights, a swaying sign, or the rolling of waves, create an implicit rhythm your mind naturally follows. The brain constantly searches for cycles and intervals, grouping sensory input into sequences that feel coherent and predictable. This internal pulse guides movement, shapes speech, and organizes thought, showing that rhythm is not limited to sound but is a fundamental structure of perception itself. You understand speech in noisy environments more easily than you expect because the brain combines prediction, familiarity, and specialized processing to extract meaning. When someone speaks to you, your mind anticipates sentence structure and fills in missing pieces masked by surrounding sounds. Visual cues, like the movement of the mouth, reinforce this process, and familiar voices are recognized through their distinctive rhythms and tones. The brain prioritizes speech, filtering irrelevant noise so the important message becomes clearer. You often only notice how chaotic the environment was when you intentionally focus on the background. This ability to find order in auditory clutter demonstrates how actively your mind shapes perception, highlighting what matters while softening what does not. Being in water alters nearly every sense you depend on. Sound travels faster and reaches you through both bone and skin, giving it a rounder, closer quality. Light bends as it enters the surface, making objects appear nearer or larger, while colors shift as deeper wavelengths fade, muting reds and amplifying greens and blues. Your sense of balance changes as gravity feels less absolute, and movement becomes slower yet strangely effortless. Pressure spreads evenly across the body, dulling some sensations while heightening others, like the faint brush of a current. Even your awareness of your own size shifts as buoyancy lightens the limbs. Water creates a world that feels familiar yet altered, revealing how adaptable perception truly is. Although taste feels like something that happens on the tongue, much of what you call flavor comes from scent molecules rising through the back of the nose. When this pathway is blocked, aromatic signals weaken, leaving only the basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. Foods that once felt rich become muted, and subtle distinctions fade. Texture suddenly becomes more noticeable as the brain searches for missing information, and temperature plays a larger role in shaping the impression of a dish. Even familiar meals can feel unfamiliar without smell. The shift reveals how deeply the senses cooperate. Taste is not a single sense but a layered construction, each component essential to the fullness of eating. Distance perception relies on far more than vision. The size of familiar objects, surface texture, and detail sharpness all contribute to your sense of how far away something is. Hazy or indistinct objects feel farther because your brain uses clarity as a depth cue. Sound adds information through echoes and volume shifts, refining spatial judgment. Even the position of your body matters. Slight head tilts and subtle posture changes adjust the angles through which you interpret the scene. Motion deepens perception further. Nearby objects shift faster as you walk, giving the brain constant updates. Together, these cues form a rich, multi-layered understanding of space. Familiar voices are recognized almost instantly because the brain stores detailed acoustic patterns tied to people you know well. A single syllable can be enough for identification. These patterns, shaped by pitch, rhythm, and tone, become deeply ingrained through repeated exposure. Unfamiliar voices require more analysis since the brain must compare them to a wider set of possibilities. Familiarity speeds this process, enabling rapid understanding of emotion, intention, or urgency. Even over distance or through muffled sound, recognition remains surprisingly strong. This rapid identification reflects the social nature of perception. Familiar voices act as anchors in a complex soundscape. Pain is shaped not only by physical events but also by expectations. When you anticipate something painful, the brain increases sensitivity in the affected region, preparing for potential harm. This heightened alertness can amplify sensations that would otherwise be mild. Muscles may tense unconsciously, and simple pressure or temperature shifts can feel sharper. When little pain is expected, the brain dampens incoming signals and softens the experience. These contrasting effects show that pain is an interpretation woven from sensation, emotion, and memory. Expectation actively molds the experience, proving that the mind influences the body's responses at a fundamental level. Your brain rewards the act of recognizing patterns by releasing subtle bursts of satisfaction, encouraging you to seek structure in complexity. Pattern recognition accelerates learning, supports prediction, and helps decode social behavior. When a melody resolves, or a puzzle begins to make sense, the clarity you feel is the brain reinforcing the discovery. This ability helps interpret language by filling in missing words and aids visual processing by matching shapes and colors to expectations. Pattern recognition operates on many levels at once, from simple rhythms to complex behaviors, and the pleasure it generates reveals its central role in perception and understanding. Even in a noisy crowd, your own name stands out with unexpected clarity because the brain treats it as a high-priority signal. Parts of your auditory system continuously scan the background for familiar patterns, even when your conscious attention is elsewhere. When your name appears, the brain boosts its importance and redirects your focus toward the sound. This mechanism works even when the name is spoken softly or from far away. Similar processes help you notice the cry of someone you care about or the voice of a significant person. Personal relevance acts as a beacon within noise, cutting through distraction with remarkable precision. Experiences like these emerge because the brain's sensory systems keep firing even when the outside world grows quiet. Deprived of incoming signals, they begin generating their own patterns vivid enough to mimic true perception. Imagination or memory can nudge these networks into producing images or sounds so convincing that they feel almost real. When you concentrate intensely on an imagined object, the brain can enrich that thought with texture, temperature, or even a sense of weight. Sensory deprivation strengthens this effect by removing competing input, giving internal signals more room to unfold. The brain doesn't fall silent when the world does. Instead, it becomes inventive, filling the empty space with self-generated impressions that reveal how much perception is constructed internally rather than merely received. You often perceive faces where no actual face exists. This happens because the human brain is strongly tuned for face detection, an ability essential for social understanding and safety. Even vague arrangements can activate facial processing circuits. Clouds, shadows, wood grain, or the random pattern of windows on a building can suddenly look expressive. The mind rapidly assembles these fragments into something familiar, a pair of eyes, a mouth, a suggestion of emotion. This tendency appears early in life and remains stable throughout adulthood. Specialized regions in the brain keep responding even to crude or faint similarities to a real face. Although this sensitivity sometimes leads to false detections, it also allows you to locate real faces instantly in a crowd. The mechanism trades occasional errors for speed, an advantageous exchange in evolutionary terms. The phenomenon shows how strongly the mind seeks order within chaos. When presented with ambiguous shapes, the brain prefers meaning over randomness, filling the gaps with its best guesses. Among all possible patterns, faces hold a special grip on attention. They carry information about identity, intention, and emotion, so the brain assigns them priority above most other visual categories. This priority shapes not only what you see but how you see. Perception becomes an active construction shaped by expectation, memory, and the brain's urge to interpret. Even taste, something that feels purely physical, is mostly guided by smell, memory, and context blending together. Flavor is less a property of food and more a synthesis created by the nervous system. Your senses, rather than passively recording reality, are constantly weaving internal and external signals into a single coherent experience. When the outer world dims, the inner world grows louder. This dynamic reveals a simple truth. Perception is a negotiation between what enters the brain and what the brain already expects. In moments of silence, darkness, or ambiguity, expectation often takes the lead. The more the external world withdraws, the more vividly the mind expresses itself, sometimes as imagined textures, sometimes as phantom faces, sometimes as flavors conjured from memory. In the end, perception is not delivered to you, it is built by you. The brain is not a camera, it is a storyteller shaping raw signals into meaning. The same room that feels safe and ordinary in calm moments can become strangely unsettling when you are anxious. A familiar melody may spark joy one day and nostalgia the next. Even neutral expressions or everyday gestures can gain emotional weight depending on the state of mind you bring with you. This shift happens automatically as the brain searches for patterns and meaning, using past experience to tint the present moment. Emotion shapes attention, highlighting certain details while letting others fade. Because of this, two people can share the same event yet walk away with entirely different impressions. It is not the event itself that generates emotion, it is the interpretation. The mind continually weaves meaning into experience, giving each moment a tone that reflects your personal history. Straight lines can appear distorted depending on the shapes surrounding them. When a simple upright line sits among angled forms, your mind may interpret it as leaning, stretching, or bending although it remains perfectly straight. Nearby curves may make the line seem longer or shorter. Repetitive backgrounds can make it shimmer or shift. These illusions arise because the brain never evaluates shapes in isolation, it judges them relative to their context. This relational processing helps you understand complex scenes quickly, but it also makes you vulnerable to distortion. The surrounding forms influence interpretation so strongly that you may become convinced the line has changed even when your rational mind knows it hasn't. These distortions reveal a deeper truth. Perception is built from comparison, not absolute measurement. The world you see is formed from relationships, not isolated objects. In low-contrast environments, the brain struggles to judge speed accurately. When an object moves through fog, dim light, or a surface that blends with its outline, the edges become harder to track, leaving movement cues weak or incomplete. As a result, motion may appear slower or faster than it truly is. A car drifting through mist may seem gentle despite high speed, while a person walking in shadows may appear to accelerate because their outline dissolves into the darkness. The brain depends on clear borders to estimate speed reliably. When those borders soften, especially in peripheral vision, where detail is already limited, motion perception becomes more impressionistic than precise. Many people can sense when someone is looking at them. A sudden awareness arises even before eye contact is made. This sensitivity comes from the brain's ability to detect subtle cues in posture, angle, and social presence. The mind continuously tracks the direction of others' attention using fragments of visual and auditory information you may not consciously notice. Even slight shifts in orientation or silence can alert the system. Humans evolved in social groups where awareness of gaze was essential for cooperation and safety. This deep-rooted system persists today, allowing you to sense attention with surprising accuracy, even in a crowd. There is nothing mystical about this ability. It reflects a highly refined perceptual mechanism shaped by generations of social experience. Imagined warmth can produce real sensations. The boundary between perception and imagination is far more permeable than it appears. When you vividly picture a warm environment, the brain may trigger physical responses similar to actual heat. Blood flow in the skin may shift, muscles may loosen, and the surface of the body can feel subtly warmer. This occurs because mental imagery activates many of the same neural pathways used for real sensory input. Athletes often use this effect during mental rehearsal, imagining the warmth of movement to prepare their bodies. People in cold environments sometimes picture fire or sunlight to ease discomfort. Even memories of warmth, holding a hot drink or sitting beside a fire, can trigger faint physical echoes of the original sensation. Your sense of scale shifts when your reference points change. Objects appear larger or smaller depending on what surrounds them. A medium-sized item placed among tiny objects seems big, while the same item among larger forms appears small. Even architectural spaces take advantage of this effect. A tall room with high ceilings can make you feel smaller, while a narrow hallway can make you feel larger or more present. Distance, lighting, and shape reinforce these impressions. When reference points fade, such as in fog or featureless landscapes, scale becomes difficult to judge at all. A small hill may look enormous, or a large object may seem strangely close. This flexibility helps the mind interpret complex scenes quickly, even if it sometimes produces illusions. Motion can be sensed even when your body is still. Sometimes the feeling of movement arises entirely from internal interpretation. Watching clouds drift or standing next to a train that begins to move can create the sense that you yourself are shifting, even when you are not. These sensations occur because the brain must integrate visual and inner signals to maintain stability. When one signal suggests motion and the other does not, the mind must choose which interpretation feels more coherent. Sometimes vision wins, creating the illusion of movement. Your body may be still, yet your mind can generate a gentle internal sway that feels entirely real. This negotiation reveals how perception balances conflicting information to create the most stable understanding possible. Imagined objects can feel as though they have mass. Visualizing holding or lifting something can subtly activate the muscles involved in the real action, creating the expectation of weight. Your arms may tense or loosen depending on the imagined heaviness. This effect strengthens neural pathways and is used in training, music practice, and creative problem solving. Athletes imagine lifting objects. Musicians picture the weight of their instruments to refine posture. The ability to feel the mass of something that isn't there shows how perception and imagination work as a single system. The brain simulates physical experience, producing sensory shadows of events that never occurred. Even silence has presence. It is not an empty absence but a perceptual experience shaped by environment and inner state. In a forest, silence feels spacious and alive with soft rhythms. In a quiet room at night, it can feel dense and heavy. The faint sounds of your own body, breathing, heartbeat, subtle muscular shifts, rise into awareness, giving silence its own internal landscape. Anticipation shapes it as well. Expecting a sound makes silence tense, while calmness makes it soothing. Silence holds emotional resonance through memory. It carries the echoes of moments you have lived, making stillness feel meaningful rather than empty. The mind interprets silence, giving it structure, tone, and presence. When you engage with someone, your brain quietly tracks tiny shifts in posture, timing, and physical rhythm. If the other person subtly mirrors your gestures or movements, your mind detects this alignment even if you never consciously notice it. This synchrony can create an immediate sense of closeness, comfort, or, even in tense situations, a sharp alertness. Humans are naturally tuned to coordinated movement because shared motion once helped early groups cooperate and stay safe. Even today, you may feel more connected to someone who unconsciously matches your walking pace or mirrors your gestures while speaking. Your brain reads this coordination as a sign of rapport, understanding, and shared intention, even when it happens beneath awareness. This sensitivity heightens in emotionally significant moments, where mirrored movements form a silent dialogue beneath spoken words. Random events often appear meaningful because the human mind is wired to search for order in chaos. When confronted with unpredictability, the brain tends to weave scattered elements into patterns, even when none exist. This tendency is rooted in survival. Spotting real patterns quickly has always mattered more than occasionally seeing false ones. Clouds may resemble creatures, coincidences may feel symbolic, and repeated numbers may appear to carry hidden meaning. These impressions feel real because the brain rewards pattern detection with a sense of clarity and significance. Illusions demonstrate how powerful this system is. An image that shifts or pulses can evoke genuine excitement, tension, or surprise. Even when you logically know the illusion is fake, your emotional response may linger because feelings arise before reasoning. Your skin also serves as an intricate sensory network, detecting not just touch but airflow, vibration, temperature shifts, and subtle movement. These signals combine to build a continuous map of your surroundings, even when you aren't consciously paying attention. A single glance can completely shift how you interpret a sound, especially when the noise is unclear or ambiguous. A brief glance at someone's face while they speak can instantly reshape how you hear their voice. Looking at an object that produces a sound also influences what you believe the noise represents. Vision adds layers of context by subtly adjusting your perception of pitch, rhythm, and tone. Even when two sounds are identical, watching lips or hands move can shift the way your brain interprets them. This occurs because the mind constantly tries to build a single coherent picture out of conflicting signals. When visual cues suggest one meaning and sound suggests another, the brain blends them into its most logical interpretation. The result isn't always perfectly accurate, but it allows the senses to work together with remarkable efficiency. Expectations can even change how warm or cool something feels before your skin makes proper contact. A room painted in warm tones may feel slightly hotter, while a frosted glass may seem colder before you take a sip. Even imagining warmth can create a faint sensation of heat across the body due to the brain's predictive systems. Studies show that identical objects can feel warmer or cooler solely because of suggestion or context. These experiences reveal that temperature is shaped not only by touch but also by belief, emotion, and memory. Surrounding shapes can dramatically influence how large or small an object appears. An object placed near larger forms often feels diminished, while the same object among smaller forms seems enlarged. Simple arrangements, like circles placed in different sizes, can produce surprising illusions of scale. Your brain judges size relationally, refining its estimates using lighting, spacing, and surrounding texture. This relational method helps you understand scale quickly in unfamiliar or complex environments. Visual flashes can also create a sense of rhythm, even without any accompanying sound. When lights flicker in steady intervals, your brain naturally groups them into beats and timing patterns. These visual rhythms activate internal timing systems that help coordinate movement and expectation. Rhythm, then, becomes a way the mind organizes sequences, whether through sound, motion, or flashes of light. Imagined threats can trigger very real physical reactions, even without any external danger. Your heartbeat may quicken, your breathing may shift, and your muscles may tense as if preparing to respond. This happens because the brain uses the same emotional and defensive circuits for imagined scenarios as it does for real ones. The survival systems that once protected early humans still activate during memory, anticipation, or worry. This shows how imagination and perception blend together, shaping the body's reactions even without external triggers. The mind also brings order to chaos effortlessly, assembling scattered shapes, sounds, or ideas into meaningful patterns. Random marks may begin to resemble an image, while unrelated sounds may feel like a rhythm. The brain's desire for coherence weaves fragments into narratives, making sense of the world even when information is incomplete. Meaning appears, not because chaos has changed, but because the mind has connected the dots. And as your thoughts quieten and night deepens, you may notice the soft echo of everything you've explored. The mind is a vast landscape, always turning sensation into meaning and finding beauty in the smallest details. Even now, as your eyes grow heavy, your senses gently soften the world around you, shaping it into calmness. But if this quiet journey brought you comfort, feel free to like, subscribe, or share your thoughts below. Your support helps others discover these peaceful moments as they move slowly through stillness. There will always be another gentle video waiting for you, ready to guide you deeper into calm whenever you return. For now, let your breath slow, let the day fall away, and allow the quiet to carry you into rest. Good night.